A few months ago, I received the most recent version of Bean Boozled as a gift. Of course, I began playing the game, and one of the first beans I pulled was one that looked brown with white spots. I looked up which one it might be on the back of the box, and as my eyes fell upon the one I believed to appear most similar to the one in my hand, I began reading it. The bean was listed as cappuccino or liver and onions. I was curious as to what the liver and onions bean would taste like, but at the same time, I really didn't want to know. I ate the bean, and sure enough, it was liver and onions. The second I processed the taste, I began to feel as though I couldn't move. The most horrified, startled expression fell upon my face. I felt such a quaint sense of fear, yet I would not have described the taste as bad. I didn't even spit it out. The best way I could describe it would have been, it tasted like a horrific death. But not because it reminded me of the way a dead animal smells or anything like that. It didn't really remind me of anything. It simply tasted that way for no reason. For the rest of the day, I couldn't stop thinking about how fearful it was. All of this from the taste of a jelly bean. Typically, when someone thinks of fear evoked by a physical source, a loud, startling noise or an unsettling visual will come to mind. No one will think of a scary taste, and I believe that is because no one has really experienced one. Because taste is not typically thought of as an emotive sense. The sight of a beautiful sunset or the sound of wind chimes is easily breathtaking for many people. These are significant experiences because sight and sound are dominant senses for most. But the taste of your favorite childhood snack could easily be just as powerful. Does this mean that you could express an artistic vision through taste? When you think of a work of art, you may think of a drawing or a song, and you would certainly not be wrong to think of these when prompted with this question. However, these are only visual and audio works of art. Sight and sound once again being the dominant sensory mediums for art. But what about taste? Could a really tasty dish be considered a work of art? Well, cooking is an art, it is a culinary art. But if you imagine a culinary work of art, you may think of something like decorating cakes, making them look visually appealing. But nobody cares about how a cake looks, so long as it tastes good. If a drawing is visual art, a song is audio art, then does this make a really good dish gustatory art? Gustatory meaning of the sense of taste. However, when you experience the taste of a food, your tongue isn't the only sensory organ in play. You are also smelling the food through the nasopharynx at the back of your throat. The taste and smell of the food work together to create what you would name as the taste of a particular food. However, in my opinion, the smell of food is far more important than the taste. When you're sick and you can't smell anything, food becomes far less enjoyable to eat. If you, for example, ate a potato chip without being able to smell it, the chip would only taste salty. You would not be able to smell the potato or potential flavoring on it, which I find to be the most important part of a chip. Being unable to smell while sick reminds you how important a factor it is when tasting food. You can't really use sense of taste to express anything meaningful on its own. But sense of smell is different. There are a lot of really powerful scents in nature, whether it be through nostalgia or simply your personal perception of a given smell. An extremely beautiful landscape could elicit indescribable emotions, and the same thing applies to certain scents. You can't really describe a smell with words. You could say the smell of an apple smells like an apple, but that isn't a meaningful description of it. You don't need to say an apple looks like an apple, you just need to say it looks red. We may not have many words to describe smells, but that doesn't mean smell is a vague sense. I would say it is actually quite vivid. So what could you express through sense of smell? When creating diversely powerful art through visual or audio mediums, it is far easier. With visual art, it is very easy to think of ways to express emotion through color and setting to create an atmosphere. And with audio art, it is easy to think of ways to express emotion through words and instruments. But perception of smell is wildly different. If we are looking for art that reminds of a particular scent, look no further than View of Harlem with Bleaching Grounds by Jacob van Ruysdael. This painting certainly depicts a beautiful landscape. However, Apollo magazine details the fact that bleaching grounds from this time period had an overpowering, noisome stench. This bleaching process would supposedly have been described as smelling like a combination of rank buttermilk and sharp lye. People in this town during the time period would be acutely aware of this smell, meaning the intent behind the painting was likely to remind people of it, making this painting a work of art that was intended to elicit remembrance of a particular olfactory sensation. Olfactory, of course, means of the sense of smell. Even if that is the intent, All of this is portrayed through solely visual representation. What if we want to make art with pure use of a particular scent? There's a term for this: olfactory art. Olfactory art is, of course, artistic expression conveyed through sense of smell. The first known example of this can be found all the way back in 1938, when Benjamin Perret roasted coffee behind screens in an exposition I won't even try to pronounce. But my favorite example of olfactory art is the work of Peter de Couper, who describes himself as an olfactory artist. He makes things such as his perfume paintings, but he is also known for making sculptures, typically with the use of genuine human hair. His piece Soft Memory is a hairbrush with a lock of real hair that belonged to World War II survivors, and the piece was scented with the smell of gunpowder. This could potentially smell reminiscent of a war. He also makes sculptures vaguely shaped like women out of black pepper with clothing made of human hair. Another sculpture by him is Salt Flowers. These sculptures are made purely out of granulated salt stuck together to look vaguely like flowers. However, the artistic appeal does not reside within the visual presentation, rather, the fact that these sculptures are scented like real flowers. Visually, these sculptures are bland, drained of color and vague in form. But the scent could possibly cause someone to think of the sculptures more as flowers afterwards, altering their perception of them. The artist took a bleak sculpture and made the experience enjoyable without adding anything to it visually. The inverse of the salt flowers can be found in his piece, Smoke Flowers. These are flowers that appear as regular flowers, but when you get up close and smell them, they regurgitate smoke at the viewer. Both works criticize our social attitude towards urban and industrial pollution, which makes these works quite abstract. Peter de Couper certainly has some interesting works, but he also has ones that are none other than incredibly weird, such as these ones. I'll just let you have a look for yourself. Now this begs the question, what is the point of olfactory art besides simply unique experimentation? Could olfactory art be utilized to express even more than visual or audio art could? Well, probably not, but I will argue based on what we've observed that it can be just as expressive as visual and audio art, only in different ways. Not only can certain smells be emotionally powerful, but they can also be used to express an artistic vision. However, olfactory art is quite abstract. I'm not entirely sure if you could depict direct representation through a scent. You can interpret language through multiple different senses, by reading words, hearing someone talk, or by feeling braille. But you can't smell language. You cannot directly express words through scent. Although I would love to see someone attempt to write some kind of olfactory novel, I suppose it may be possible to invent a smell language, but that would probably be incredibly difficult, and it wouldn't really serve any practical purpose other than interesting experimentation with human perception. And we're only talking about human perception. Dogs have more than 100 million sensory receptor sites in the nasal cavity, compared to the 6 million in human nasal cavities. By simply smelling, a dog can determine if another dog is male or female, happy or aggressive, and healthy or ill. Needless to say, dogs experience smell many, many times more vividly than humans do. If a human sense of smell was this vivid, could we experience language through olfactory input? I guess we can never truly know for sure. As I stated earlier, sight and sound are the dominant senses for most people. Your sense of smell isn't realistically that important, but I'm sure many of us are glad to have it. While I have not personally had the experience of any olfactory art outside maybe perfumes, it certainly seems like it would be an interesting one.